I'm starving. This is a good show. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Great show tonight. Our next performance is tomorrow afternoon, 1:30 half, 2 o'clock curtain. Have a good night.
Can we give a round of applause for all of those wonderful films, please? I am now very excited to welcome to the stage the following filmmakers for a Q&A. Can I please have Willow Van Roostelaar, the director of By the Waves We Drift, Emily Alton, director and writer of On the Porch, Jenna Lefebvre, director of The Last Reel, Eileen McCurdy, director, writer, and producer of Marianne and Agnes, Mark Whiteway, director of photography, editor, and producer for Marianne and Agnes, and Peter Pasek, writer and director of The Understudy. Let's give a round of applause, please. Okay, thank you for coming, everyone. I'd love if we can just go down one by one, first and foremost, and introduce everyone in the film that you had, and I'll be excited to be asking questions.
My name is Genevieve Lefebvre, and I directed The Last Reel.
My name is Willow Van Roostelaar, and I'm the writer and director of By the Waves We Drift.
My name's Eileen McCurdy, and I wrote and directed Agnes and Marianne.
My name's Mark Whiteway, DP and editor of Marianne and Agnes.
My name's Emily Alton, and I am writer and director of On the Front Porch.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Peter Pasek, and I'm the writer and director of The Understudy.
Yeah, let's hear it. Peter, I would love to start with you at the end there. So we just saw The Understudy, which is the last film we saw. You brilliantly talk about such a terrifying subject matter with humor. And I just have to guess that this has to come from someone with a bit of firsthand experience. Is that true?
Well, it is, yes, because I work in the theater as well. I direct theater as well as film, and I've seen these things happen, and I know, the film was kind of an ode to, the people behind the scenes that make show business run. And honestly, in the writing of the film, we had to kind of make it feel like more believable. Like, I know stories that are crazy that you put on film and say like nobody would believe that. So this was the version that I thought, could be plausible for an audience.
And on that note, are there any films that you've watched, short films or features, that similarly mixed this genre of suspense and humor?
Good question. I mean, there was all kinds of film comps going through my head, like anywhere from Cassavetes' Opening Night, which is, about the world of theater. But I thought about the Safdie brothers and how their films always have a kind of propulsive, driving action. But tonally, thought about Alexander Payne and, his films, which are always sort of tragicomic, bittersweet comedy. They don't necessarily end on a happy note. They're like absurdist. So all of those things would go through my head.
That's fantastic. And Emily, I got a couple of more filmmaking questions for you from the film. So is it true, I was sitting over there on the side, but was that shot in 4:3 aspect ratio?
That is correct.
That is very fun. Something I noticed throughout the entire film is it was very static. It was a lot of your shots were on a tripod, and then you made a very deliberate decision at the end to do what appeared to be a dolly shot pushing in. Can you just talk about what went into your decision making there and why you decided to finally introduce movement into the film?
So for the beginning of the film, I wanted it to be very character-driven, very dialogue-heavy, and that's what it was. I wanted the focus to be on that and not the camera. rather than just the characters themselves, getting to know them. And then once we got to know them, I wanted to bring us into this world with them along with the music. I wanted us to have a moment with them. I wanted it to feel like the audience was present there with those characters, and that's why I zoomed it in. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I think a common trend here I'm going to ask is, did you write this from experience? Did that happen to you the night prior where you're like, I got to tell this short film?
Yes and no. I drew things based on past experiences, but for the actual moment itself, no. But yeah, definitely, I definitely write what you know, and yeah, that's what I did.
Certainly. And Mark, so we have Mark and Eileen here from both the short films, Marianne and Agnes. Mark, I would love for you to talk a bit about, in Marianne, the ink press that you guys had, where that came from, was it real, and what was that like to be able to use such a historic object?
Yeah, so the ink press that you saw in the film is the real thing that Marianne and Shad Carey actually used, which we were blown away that we actually got to use in the film. And we actually have Marianne Shad Carey's descendant here, Michelle Robbins, who played in the film. And she very carefully handled the object for us. And yeah, it was a bit of a pinch-me moment that we got to use that in the film.
That is awesome. And Eileen, as the director of these, you, again, have, same with Emily here, very static camera, and you're relying so heavily on the performance of these two women. What is the casting process like there? And just, you're literally putting trust in these actresses to just perform really well. And what is the trust like there in the conversations that go like on the day?
Well, yeah, Marianne is here, Michelle Robbins, and Dinah Watts, who played Agnes MacPhail, is also here, so thank you, Dinah. I just wanted to let the story come through, and I think that these women are such Canadian trailblazers, and they have their own sense of humor and their own incredible, inspiring stories that I didn't think that needed to be dressed up. I just wanted it to be focused on them and their story, and to make it feel really personal, because they were real women who existed and they did extraordinary things, but they were ordinary people.
That's fantastic. And why these two stories in particular? I remember learning about these in elementary school, and I'm just curious, where in your life did you decide that these were the two stories that you felt were really important to tell?
Well, I'm really heartened and impressed that you learned about them in school, because some people aren't familiar with these women. We worked in partnership with London Women's History Project, and they were a huge part of selecting the women. Part of the series is also Dr. Emily Stowe, who was the first woman to practice medicine in Canada, so it's a third film that's part of this series. And of course, there's so many women potentially that you could feature, and I just think it's important to look back at our own Canadian history. We've been informed so much by British history and American history. With Agnes MacPhail, you know, you might not have heard her name, but you certainly can relate to her story, I think, once you hear it. And for someone like Marianne Shad Carey, you know, she was born in the US, then she moved to Canada, and so she kind of straddles the line. And actually, I should add that Michelle Robbins, who plays Marianne, is the curator of Buxton National Historic Site, as well as being a descendant. All of the kids that you see in the classroom scene, they are all part of the Shad family. So I think it's just really important to find those stories and find a way to tell them.
That's fantastic. And we have Willow here, who's the director of By the Waves We Drift. Willow is a alumni of the Youth Film Festival here, so is Emily, and Willow was a winner of the Most Enterprising Filmmaker Award. So if you guys have anything to do tonight, it is the Youth Screen Awards here tonight. Everyone gets dressed up, all high school students, and they come out and show short films, and it's a really great time. And Willow, your film, I feel like it's very much an experimental film. Would you think that that was a decision made early on, that it wasn't necessarily a narrative and it was more drifting into the experimental genre?
Yes, I definitely wanted to experiment with blending documentary and experimental genres. So it started off with kind of the concept of, I'd really like to explore water as a metaphor for kind of life and death, or kind of family ancestry. So I've grown up by Lake Huron, and how that kind of ties to my family and the kind of memories that water can embody. So then seeing as water is kind of a fluid source, I did want to add in those kind of experimental. I think that was the way to tell it in terms of documentary, was to blend that experimental genre.
And that's great, and there's a lot of voiceover in this film. And I'm curious, did you record the voiceover prior to shooting everything, or was it after the fact?
The voiceover was an interesting process. I started off writing a voiceover, and it did start off as kind of a traditional documentary where I'm writing kind of an intro to water and the kind of historical context. And then I started interviewing my family members and just started talking to people about the concept. So the voiceover that you do hear in the end is I ended up just using my grandmother's voice. So it's kind of her that guides us through. And I believe the recording was originally about a half an hour, so it was kind of weeding down and picking out the best parts of that. So that's kind of how that process went.
That's fantastic. And Genevieve, the director of The Last Reel. Who here has been to the Highland before and loves the Highland? Good, good. As someone who's a Highland attendee for probably many years, what was the moment or the catalyst that was like, oh, I don't want to just go see movies at the Highland anymore. I now want to assist in telling their story?
That's a really difficult question to answer. I think it was, so I'm in school, I'm in the advanced filmmaking program at Fanshawe, so we were making our documentaries in the second year, and since I love the Highlands so much, it kind of was just a no-brainer to make a documentary about it. Originally, we wanted to talk about how they struggled through COVID, but obviously everyone's tired of hearing about COVID, so it kind of became more of a love letter to the theater and its importance in my life, in my crew's life, and just the community here in London. So.
And you talk about a pivot there. Did you actually get somewhat along in making the documentary before you made the pivot, or was that something more in pre-production when you decided to pivot to more of maybe a more lighthearted take?
I think, well, when we did the interviews, we did ask questions about it, and when we were in the rough draft of editing, we decided that it just wasn't an important part of the story, and then including with everybody else, the attendees that were interviewed, it just made sense to kind of take away that aspect of it and make it more about the importance of the theater.
And exciting news, if you guys read recently, they just got the ability to play 70 millimeter film. Will we potentially be getting a sequel documentary about the exciting opportunities the Highland will be having there?
I'm not sure. I think that since we did kind of cover that they were in the process of building the 70 millimeter projector while we were making the documentary, I'm not sure if we will make another one. It depends on whether or not they start screening 70 millimeter more regularly.
And I'd love to open it up to the audience, if we can get the lights for a moment. All right, that's okay. Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed the pizza and pop.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Right as I ask questions.